Good morning, mathematicians. Week 25, we are looking at Tuesday. We're starting off with modeling decimals. Let's think about what we did yesterday. Yesterday, we took a look at taking, of course, our 9/10ths, and I kind of outlined it. I'm visually looking at this space, my 9 out of 10 columns to show 9/10ths. Now, this way, I took a look at 6/10ths, which is like 6 out of the 10 rows. So we're looking at this horizontally, and we're looking at the 9/10ths vertically. Notice, boys and girls, I have boxed and highlighted where the overlap would occur between those two decimals. That is 54 hundredths. If I counted those individually, I would count up 54. The more efficient would be to think of this as a 6 by 9 array. And of course, each individual square of our base 10 grid is a hundredth, so that is 54 hundredths in that initial model. Now, our second diagram is thinking about division. So my entire diagram shows one whole, but note I am breaking it up into 2/10 portions. So I have shaded 2/10 in pink. I have then highlighted 2/10 in blue, shaded 2/10 in pink, shaded 2/10 in blue, and then another group of pink. Now we see the 5 in how many groups we created. We created 5 groups. 3 of those were pink, 2 of those were blue, because we broke our whole into 2/10 portions. Now let's go to Pablo Pickleso. He thinks about from painting pickles to do some math. He says that 12 and 4/10 times 3 and 9/10 equals 124 over 10 times 39 over 10 equaling 4,836 divided by 100. Now he uses that number, 4,836 divided by 100, to arrive at his decimal place being between the 8 and the 3. So we have 48 and 36 hundredths. It's not asking us to do a similar problem by following his strategy. No, it is asking us to think, why would he solve it that way? Why would that be his strategy? What we can see in how he turned this into this is, notice, boys and girls, we're really thinking about the relationship between a tenth and 1/10, right? So instead of thinking about 4/10, he created a fraction that, of course, had 4/10, but also represented that this is really 124/10. So, luckily, the reason he did this was because this allowed him to use fractions and not decimals. So he wasn't having to think about his decimal value until the very end when he moved that decimal place in so that it would reflect dividing by 100, right? So that is the likely reason why he would do that, is it means he doesn't need to deal with decimals, right? Instead, he converted it to its fraction form. They have the same value. They would sit in the same place in another line, but we're looking at the fraction form, okay? Now this one is counting up. So remember in our strategies of counting up, I've shown it a lot with a number line. Let's do this one without the number line. So remember, this is our starting point. This is our destination. So we're starting with this part. We're going to add the other parts until we arrive at this number. And we're going to figure out how much we have to go up to go from 31 and 32 hundredths to get here. Now, the first thing I'm going to zero in on is this. In fact, this one kind of excites me because look, I have 32 hundredths. Here I have 42 hundredths. So my initial going up, I'm going to start with just going up by 1/10. Because if I go up by 1/10, I'm still at 31, but instead of 32 hundredths, I'm at 42 hundredths, right? So that's my initial counting up. Now I'm at 31 and 42 hundredths. And I want to count up from 31 up to 73. That is a difference of 42. So I went from 31 plus 42 to get to 73. And remember, I already was at that target of 4,200, right? So now what I have to think is, okay, I went from 31 and 32 hundredths to 73 and 42 hundredths. But now I have to ask myself, okay, what was the part that I went up? These are the two values that I went up. I have to add those together. I have 42. I have 1/10. I arrive at 42. Oh, and 1/10 or 42 and 100. That's how I get to my answer, right? This, boys and girls, is the difference between these values because that is how much I had. Of course, that zero on the end is optional. We can report that or not, and it means the same thing. Okay, let's go to this one. Stitchy Richie stitches a scarf that is 8,708 and 70, or excuse me, 91 feet long, a sock that is 14,921 and 1/10 foot, and a glove that is 41,111 and 11 hundredths feet long. The first thing we're going to do is round each figure to the nearest whole, and then we'll find the length. Wow, that is a lot of stitching. So let's start with the scarf. This is the scarf, and remember I'm rounding to the nearest whole, which really means I'm going to lose the decimal value. But before I do that, I'm just asking, is this closer to an 8 here or a 9 here? Am I going to round down and go to the 8 in the ones place, or am I going to round up and go to a 9 in the ones place? Is this closer to 8,708 or 8,709? Surely we can see it is pretty close to 8,709. That one I'll round up. Now let's go to the sock. My goodness, I've never seen a sock that long. This has a 1/10 decimal. We're going to lose that. So is it closer to rounding down and keeping this a 1, or is it closer to rounding up and make this a 2? Well, we can see we're going to keep that a 1. So we have 14,921. Okay, very good. Now we're going to go to the glove. This is the glove. Right now we have 11 hundredths. I can even hear that 11 is very far from 100. So yes, this is not a number that's going to cause my ones place to round up. Instead, we're going to have 41 and, actually 41, 111, no decimal, so no and. Now we're going to add these together. So I have 9 plus 1 plus 1 is 11. I have 1 plus 2 plus 1 is 4. I have 9 plus 1 makes a 10, plus 7 more is 17. Now I'm going to have 8 plus 1 makes a 10, plus 4 gives me 14. Here's my 4, carry my 1, and 1 plus 4 is 6. Now we're going to ask ourselves about that number. Right now we are looking at 64,741. What kind of unit was that reported in? It was reported in feet. Remember, boys and girls, when we're talking about measurements, we want to make sure that we include the unit, and that is